At some point in your fish keeping journey, you're going to be introduced to these ridiculous looking things, and you're going to wonder, is this a good aquarium filter type? Well, in today's video, I'm going to break down the pros and cons of sponge filters, and I'm going to try to do it in under, let's say, 8 minutes. Let's start off on the positive side with a pro. These filters don't require you to do anything special. If you're doing maintenance, if the power goes out, for whatever reason, you have a blip in your power. We had one of those the other day. I had to reset everything in my house. It was a huge pain, but guess what? I didn't have to reset any of my aquariums that had sponge filters in them. Sometimes you might have these elaborate pumps or hang on back filters, canister filters that need to be primed. And when the power goes out and they sit dormant for a little bit, you have to restart them when the power comes back on. With these, nope, they just fire right back up again. I want to keep it going with the positives. Another pro is these are a very efficient source of filtration. I know that might seem ridiculous because you're like, it's just an air line plugged into a thing and it's a sponge. How can this be as efficient as, say, hang on the back filter? Well, I would argue that they're not, but they are a very efficient form of filtration because you have all of this surface area to gather up debris from your aquarium, and you get a lot of flow through these if you have an appropriately sized air pump hooked up to them, and it's a surprising amount of flow that goes through them. So with all the surface area that would serve as a place for the growth of beneficial bacteria. If you don't know that whole deal with beneficial bacteria, watch this video up here. I think I'm pointing to the right corner. That'll explain everything, but bacteria in an aquarium is very important, and there's tons of area for that bacteria to grow on this. So they're very efficient at picking up debris, giving you a lot of flow, and being a great source for the growth of bacteria. So yeah, even for such a simple device, they're very efficient. Now we've got to talk about the dark side. We got to go with a con. And the first con that we're going to talk about here is that they're very inefficient. Huh? You just did a whole big thing about how efficient they are. Well, they are, unless you don't maintain them, you don't do anything with them, you let them get all caked up in all of that poop and food and gross and nasty, and they get clogged. They're not going to really do anything for you. You take away all of that gloriousness and this sponge is completely blocked off. First of all, some of them will kind of suck in like that and it looks really weird. They look deformed. They look broken, and there's not a whole lot of water going through it. You won't know this because the bubbles will still be coming out and you'll think, what the heck is going on here? Well, it's because it's clogged, and it's just not going to be very efficient when it's clogged. Common sense, right? Well, you know, sometimes we have to talk about things that are common sense here. But the nice thing about it is another con, or no, not a con, another pro that we'll talk about. It's very easy to clean these off. So if you do lose efficiency because they are clogged up, it's easy to fix that problem. I don't want to be doom and gloom. I want to go back to positivity. Let's talk about another positive aspect of sponge filters, and that is that there's no moving parts in here. There's actually nothing to break. So you don't have to worry about impellers getting clogged or something breaking and it's no longer working properly. There's nothing to break on here. It's just a solid little piece. It's not solid. It's actually multiple pieces. I don't know why I said that, but it all snaps together and there's nothing to break. Now, having said all of that, these are plastic pieces. They are plastic pieces that are going to be submerged in water for a long period of time. So they can wear out. If you're someone with a filter like this one in particular, this is the ATI Hydro filter, which I think is the best filter on the market. And I'll argue to the death about that. And I'll say it right to your face. I'm not afraid of you. There are pieces that do snap together. You're going to have your air line plugged in here, down through the tube, plugged into that little guy right there. And so when you want to maintain this, pull it out and clean it out, you're going to disconnect right there. Now, if you're doing this twice a week, which you shouldn't need to, but if you are doing it all the time, after some time goes by, that might wear out a little bit. And what you'll want to do is just flip it over and it'll, you get a brand new one and that's fine. But because they're plastic pieces and you're taking them in and out, they can wear out after a while. It's not something that happens after only a few weeks. It takes a very long time to do that, but there's no moving parts. So you can basically use a sponge filter forever. I mean, I've had sponge filters running for over a decade, and I've never even thought about replacing them because there's just nothing that's going to break. So that's a plus. All right, we got to go with another con. We got to go back to the dark side. This is one of the biggest points about sponge filters. It is one of the things that I hate the most about them, and I don't know anybody that likes them for this reason. I think it's pretty much unanimous. Everybody hates the fact that sponge filters take up valuable space on the substrate of your aquarium, the floor of your aquarium, if you will. That's a lot of room right there to be taking up in an aquarium. Most people do not like that. Sponge filters have a very specific purpose, in my opinion. And so the people that are going to use the bulk of sponge filters don't particularly care about this, but it is an issue if you have a display tank in your living room and you want to have every single aspect of the tank look its best. It's not going to look good with this taking up a quarter of the back of the tank, sitting there just being a sponge. It's valuable space that you could do something artistic with, and you can't do that because this is going to be blocking up that space. Now, I also want to warn you, there's a lot of people that would tell you that's no big deal. Just put stuff around it and hide it. Well, you can do that. Of course you can, but I would warn you, don't go too close to it. The more you put around a sponge filter, really close to it, the less you're going to have flow going to it, which will deplete the efficiency of this filter. So it's best to have it in the wide open. And that sucks because it doesn't look good sitting in the wide open. If you are going to kind of bury it, if you will, keep whatever it is that you're using to hide this away from it quite a bit, because you don't want to block off some of the water that could be going to it. I know it's fully submerged, but we're talking about the flow of water. I want it to have access to everything. And if you block it off because you're trying to hide it, it'll work. You won't see it, but you also won't get the peak efficiency out of it. So yeah, don't be stupid when you cover it up. On the topic of cons, I got to talk about one that definitely bothers me. It's easy to fix, but it is a problem. I got to tell you something about me that you might not know, though. I hate loud aquariums. If you watch Boxes of Water Live, which we do every Thursday night on this channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we go live for 2 hours. We talk all things aquariums. I complain about it all the time. The reason why I use these expensive microphones is because they block out a lot of background noise. I don't even know how I record in this room. You can't hear it. Sometimes you might be able to hear it when I'm absolutely silent, but it is very loud in this room. It would be worse if I had a bunch of sponge filters in there, and it's because of the bubbles. You're going to hook an air line to this, again, to that little nipple right there, but the top, you're not going to hook it up to the bottom, and it's going to come up and it's going to send all of these big bubbles. And those bubbles, I don't know any way of describing it other than to say they go like this, bloop, 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 on the top of your aquarium. And it's super loud and it's super annoying. To me, a perfect world would be aquariums that are silent. I've got something that is in the works for all of mine that's going to help that. But I hate a loud aquarium, and so I hate that about sponge filters. However, there is an easy solution. And again, I've told you, these are the best sponge filters on the market. I've told you that, right? I'm going to tell it to you again. And the reason why is because the inside of them is hollow. This is actually two pieces that snap together. They're pretty tight, and they go in there to form this little tunnel that's in the center, and it is completely hollow. So what you can do, you have your air line that comes in the aquarium that attaches to the top, and then you have your air line there. You can stick another little piece about that big to this on the other side, and then put an air stone on the other end, stick it down in here. Now you have an air stone attached to this. I put it together crooked so it looks horrible, but now instead of those big bloop, bloop, bloop bubbles, it's going to have the little finer bubbles, and it's a lot quieter, almost silent. It's as close to silent as you can get for a sponge filter. I'm talking about how bad they look. This looks even worse now because I put it together crooked. It's kind of embarrassing. There we go. But that is an easy way to quiet them down. If you don't do that, they are very loud. It might bother you. It bothers me. If that doesn't bother you, if that's the ambient noise that you like in your aquariums, then have at it. But for me, I'm putting air stones in these. Couple of rapid fire pros about these. The first is these can act as a very quick water polisher. What do I mean by that? Maybe you got a hot date coming over, or maybe your mom's coming over and she's very critical about everything in your house. And if you have a bunch of little particles floating around in your aquarium, your mom is going to notice those and she's going to give you crap for it. And you're not going to want to invite her over anymore. Well, you can put this in your aquarium, set it in there, give it a day. I mean, it happens really fast, but the day before mom comes over, put this in. It's going to suck all of those little particles up into it. And mom might make fun of you for having this big goofy looking thing in the tank. So you might want to pull it out before she gets there, but it's a great way to polish that water really fast, particularly one like this that is the fine filter foam. This is critical. It will suck all that stuff up into there real quick. And then just before mom gets there, she texts you from the gas station. She had to stop to pee because women have to pee every 5 minutes. She says, hey, young fella, I'm almost there. Okay, let me pull that out of there real quick. And then the tank will look perfect for mom. I don't know, these weird scenarios that I come up with in my head. The point is, it'll clean your water really, really fast if you have that emergency situation where you're trying to impress somebody like your mom. But there's also a huge pro with these, and that is to have them running just in case. Here's what I mean. Maybe you have a tank that has a sump like these. You can run some of these in that sump. It's going to gather up all that bacteria. It's going to be all beautiful. It's not really serving you a whole huge purpose, but it's down there. It's running. It's seeded. If you know what I mean, maybe hopefully you watched that video and now you know what I mean, but it's got all that bacteria in there. It's good. And it's in there just in case. What if you need to set up an emergency fry tank? You breed African cichlids by accident or a bunch of guppies or something, and you need to set up a tank really fast to put those fry in there. Well, you got a filter that's ready to go. All you got to do is take it out of there and put it in. I said in the sump, not everybody has a sump. You could stick one in the back corner of your tank if you don't mind it looking so silly in the back of there. You have it in there. It's running just in case you might need it. One of your fish gets injured. You have to set up a hospital tank, or you have to set up a fry tank, something like that. It's very easy to have one of these running and ready to go. You can set up your tank. You don't have anything to worry about. A lot of people are keeping shrimp. When I first started keeping fish back in 1993, I never even heard of the idea of keeping shrimp in an aquarium as pets. The only shrimp I knew of were ghost shrimp, and people only bought those to feed to their savage live eaters. But shrimp are very popular now. And whenever I talk about a power filter, whether it be an internal canister, canisters, hang-on backs, one of the first questions I see in the comment section is it shrimp safe or is it fry safe? That is a problem with a lot of power filters. They're so strong that they pull in those shrimp and they grind them up in the impeller, and it's very sad, and you lose all of your shrimp. And fry, same way. They're swimming past like minding their own business. Ooh, I'm swimming. I'm a big boy. And then whoop, they get sucked up into the filter and you never see them again. Or perhaps you clean your filter 6 months later and you find one in there that's still alive. That happened to me, and that was very strange. But you don't want your fry or your shrimp getting sucked up into a filter. They will not get sucked up to this because it has a lot of flow and it's very efficient, but it's not so powerful that it's going to stick them to the sponge and they're not going to be able to do anything. And what you'll also find, particularly with shrimp, you'll find shrimp congregating on this, and they'll be eating all of the little nuggets and little things off of it. They'll be giving you a hand keeping it clean so that it doesn't look disgusting like we talked about earlier. Absolutely fry and shrimp safe. Dare I say, there's not a more safe filter system for fry and shrimp than these things. And then the last pro, there's more that I'm probably not thinking about. If you know of more pros or cons, put them down in the comments below. But one of the big pros for this is you're not really going to find a more efficient and more cost-effective way of setting up multiple tanks. It happens to almost everybody in this hobby. It certainly happened to me, where you start to expand your operation. You start breeding, you start collecting, maybe you bring in fish and you start selling them, and whatever it is, you end up setting up a bank of tanks. Sure, you can buy hang-on back filters or canisters for every single one of them if you're rich, or you can set up an elaborate recirculating system with a large sump and all of that. Pros and cons to that too. That's all extremely expensive, but buying a couple dozen of these and a big air pump to drive all of these is very, very efficient. Plus, not efficient. It's efficient, but it's also cost effective. That's what I meant to say. But also, if something happens to one of them, you're not losing the entire system. If you have a recirculating system, if it goes down, all of the tanks are affected. If something happens to one of these, like this pops off and it's just dangling there, you don't lose all of your tanks. You're only going to have an issue with that one, which it won't really cause a huge issue. Just put it back on. What are you freaking out for? But I'm just saying, you don't lose all of them, and it's very cost effective. You're buying one pump, some airline, and a bunch of these. These are not expensive. You can buy multiples of these for the cost of one small hang on the back filter. So yeah, setting up a whole room full of tanks, you're not going to find a more inexpensive way of doing it, and you're also getting a very efficient system. But there is the last con. This is one ugly son of a bitch. This, in my opinion, is one of the more attractive sponge filters in the hobby. The ATI Hydros are, as far as sponge filters go, they're the more attractive, if you ask me, than really any of the other sponge filters out there. But it's still a big ugly sponge. It's ugly. You put it in your tank, it's the first thing people are going to see. It's ugly. It's big. It's gray. There's different sizes, obviously, depending on what size aquarium you have. The ones for a 10-gallon tank are considerably smaller than this, but it doesn't matter what size you have, and it doesn't matter what you do. They're ugly. And that is the number one drawback to these. Now, again, we go back to the last pro that I just talked about. You're setting up a whole room full of tanks. You're probably not setting it up to be a gallery of tanks. You're setting it up for business purposes or breeding purposes or whatever. You don't particularly care what it looks like. So for that, they're perfect. But if you're trying to set up a display tank that people are going to see in your living room, you're not going to want this ugly son of a bitch in the back of your tank. It just looks horrible. But I do think that the pros outweigh the cons if you're into this kind of thing. I mean, again, setting up one tank in your living room, not going to be my first choice that I would recommend to you. But, you know, depending on what you do, yes, they are very efficient. They work very well. They can be quiet. You put that air stone in there and everybody is happy, as long as you can tolerate the fact that they are so ugly. Even the attractive ones are ugly. So there you go. I don't know if I did it in under 8 minutes. Then you know what? I'm not going to break the video up so that it is 8 minutes and cut out important information that I gave you. Listen, if you're interested in these ATI Hydros, guess what? We are carrying them on our website right now. We've got all of the different sizes of these, and a cool thing about this filter that they've just done is they've redesigned the base. This is a weighted base. It used to be done with a large lead disc that was in these with the plastic around it, and that's what kept them down on the bottom. But what they've done with these is they've filled them with aquarium gravel. It comes with it. Can you hear that? It's like a maraca, and it's full of gravel. And what does that do? It's got these little slots that are in there that allow water to flow through it. And another great source for bacteria growth is gravel. I think it's a genius design. I love that they did that. And one of the things that I love about this filter in particular, and why we picked it up to carry on our website and got rid of the other ones that we had, is what is written on the bottom of that base, right there in your face with my busted up fingers. Made in the USA. It's not something you see very often anymore these days, do you? I take pride in that. I will always go American made first. If I won't go broke doing it and it's available, I will always go American made first. And so the fact that these are made and everything is made, it's not a bunch of products or a bunch of parts ordered from somewhere else, brought in and assembled in the United States. No, these are made entirely in the United States. I love that about them. If that's important to you, keepfishkeeping.com. We've got them right now ready for you. If you got to have a sponge filter, you might as well have the best one on the market. And I believe that that's these. So there you go. I hope I was able to decode a little bit about sponge filters for you and didn't take up too much of your time doing it. If you appreciate what we're doing here, click that subscribe button. It really does help out a lot. I don't like asking for it, but sometimes I do because we're not getting a lot of subscribers and it hurts my feelings. I would appreciate it if you did do that so that maybe we can be up there with the big boys someday. That would mean a lot. Anyway, thank you so much. Keepfishkeeping.com. We got all these available for you. There you go. Bye.